Welcome back to the Warrior Servant Leader podcast. We're so glad to have you here today. We have a great guest, Kimberly Braun, who was impelled from the earliest childhood experiences that she spent over a decade as a monastic nun exploring the path of presence. She has a master's in theology, lives to inspire others to connect to and live from divine love at their center. She's a TEDx speaker and former meditation faculty at the renowned Omega Institute. Kimberly's communication skills ignite transformation on all levels, serving others to live a life of greater freedom and joy. She has served tens of thousands through her writings, speaking, retreats, online courses, and her community, and has 3 books. In her newest book, Miracles in the Naked Light, is her personal and dynamic story of building a monastery with no experience and very little money. Kimberly, welcome to the Warrior Servant Leader podcast.
You did it. Great to be with you.
And I'll tell you what, coffee, it's a good thing, but sometimes, man, it makes me tongue-tied. Or what's that expression? My tongue got in front of my tooth, or my tongue. No, my eye tooth got in front of my tongue got in front of my eye tooth, and I couldn't see what I was saying.
I've never heard.
See, I even screwed that up. Man, there's so much I want to get into with you today, and I think the focus that our listeners would really walk away with some great inspiration is getting answers to that age-old question: how can I live a life of freedom, peace, and joy in a world that is so chaotic like it is today? And I know your journey has been fascinating, interesting, and at times chaotic. And I think you are the person we need to have this conversation with. So, 10 years monastic life as a nun. What's the story behind that?
Yeah, it's a very dramatic life choice, isn't it? So I definitely respect that there's always a piqued interest to know what goes into that, because it is truly a unique choice. And at the same time, for me, it was also very simple. I can't say that I felt called into religious life all my life. I grew up charismatic Catholic. We had a very vibrant life of prayer and devotion in our home, and healing gifts, and love God. And I started, when I was, my earliest recollection, having what I call unifying experiences. And everyone has these experiences, and I think children have them all the time. They just don't remember them when they get to be adults. And that is when you're in any situation in this world and you drop in more deeply and seem to experience reality on a deeper, life-giving level. And in ritual, it could be when you're playing in the sandbox, it could be when you're planting a flower, it could be in something that happens in your family and reading a book. The ways of dropping in are as many as there are moments in the day. But I remember being very, very deeply aware of what these experiences were, and connecting the dots to what they meant for my life and what they meant for life in general. I one that I remember because my mom told me when I was even younger, but I was 5 or 6 years old, and I won't go into the long story. It's a beautiful long story. But I had a very dramatic experience on an autumn day in Ohio. When autumn just first settles in Midwest, and the leaves begin to fall and the air picks up and it's slightly chilly. And I would dance my way home from school, because we walked to school then. And I would be taken up in what I was experiencing to be the dance of nature. Felt like I was just taken right into it. And I had a dramatic experience with a leaf on a tree. And long story short, the final part of that experience, and I'm happy to share the long story if you want, but this is my only way to get to the answer to your question, is the short version, is that I had this experience because something rose up within me existentially, because the leaf fell off the tree. And so in my little mind, I thought the leaf was dying.
Hmm.
There was this existential moment where I experienced that there is no such thing as death, and that the leaf was in God and God was in the leaf. And I experienced at the same time that that was me, that everything about being alive was living and moving and having my being in this eternal source, and that every joy, every ounce of direction, every meaning, everything that was worthwhile was all in the becoming and the growth in this reality of myself and creation. And so, with experiences like that were happening, where I was penetrating into a deeper understanding, and experiences of dramatic healings, and the power of prayer, and the power of contemplation, and the power of presence, my experiences catapulted, they expanded to where they were very all consuming when I was about 20 years old. And it felt like I was being pursued by the beloved, capital B. I would be taken into very deep states of bliss for hours at a time. And the natural progression with that was that there were books that fell into my lap, and those books were written by monastics.
Hmm.
I hadn't sought it out. I wasn't looking to join a monastery. I wasn't even sure I knew what a monastery was, honestly, because I grew up in a monastic environment. And I was lit up when I would write these books. They were hitting every button in me, and I felt that these people were my friends, that we were friends on the path, that I belonged with them. And they were all Carmelites in the Catholic tradition.
Hmm.
Carmelite spirituality, founded in the 1200s, were hermits on Mount Carmel, and their whole charism was to walk in divine presence. And the ones that fell into my lap were Teresa of Avila, John of the
Yeah.
Cross, Therese of Lisieux, Elizabeth of the Trinity, and on and on and on. They just showed up left and right. And then they began showing up spiritually for me beyond the books. So what ended up happening was there was kind of a no-brainer, like, well, why wouldn't I want to be with my friends? Why wouldn't I want to be in a monastery where I could really go deep with this interior experience of the divine? Because I also knew that whenever we say yes to what our path is, that is the best service that we could have in the world.
Yeah. Wow. So the gifts of the Holy Spirit,
Yeah, all of them.
and because a lot of people, uh, I, I I was headed to the priesthood when I met my wife my senior year of college, and God brought it to my attention. You wanted to be a priest. That didn't mean He wanted me to be a priest. And having those reflective moments, and for you, and I don't know the answer to this question for you. Uh, would you consider yourself a mystic from
Yeah,
that perspective?
yes, I would say that my life and my cosmology, my worldview, is 100% mystically oriented.
Okay.
That every human being has the capacity to step into or to develop that aspect of themselves. I do think we all have different callings in the world, right? And our contribution with our words, with our thoughts, with our actions are unique to us. So we'll fall in different, they're kind of like different facets to the diamond. But coming home to yourself, Karl Rahner, a great theologian who was silenced at the Vatican II. He said, God fully manifest is the human being fully alive, which says to me that when a human being says yes to the fullness of who they are and what they're meant to be, in a way they're a mystic because God is fully manifest through them.
Yeah.
So,
And this isn't just adults. In just last year, a young man born 1991, died in 2006 from leukemia, Carlo Acutis, born in France, raised in Milan, Italy, and actually got sick. But his grandmother was dying at the same time that he started not feeling well. So he kept it to himself. Yeah, he didn't say anything to anybody. Well, what it turned out was that he had leukemia, and by the time they finally discovered what it was, it was so advanced that he didn't live much longer after that. But he was 15 years old when he died, and his experience, not unlike yours, but in a different capacity, if you will, is with the Eucharist. And his favorite quote, well, it's my favorite quote of something he said, and you mentioned it to a certain degree, this was his quote: "We're all born unique, but sadly, many of us die photocopy of somebody or something else." And that we get caught up in life or with the expectations others have of us or whatever, and we miss discovering that uniqueness that God, like Jeremiah said, that before you were conceived in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I consecrated you. And that means he loved us and he had a purpose for us before we ever took our first breath on this earth. And so often, for many, many, many people, they go through life never knowing how to or actually discovering what is that consecration. So kind of what I'd like to, for you, it sounds like it was almost innate, and you ran with it kind of deal, literally ran with it. But for listeners that are out there that are going, man, I wish, because you talk about living, in that freedom and peace and joy in your life, despite or in spite of all the negativity, all the evil in the world, all that kind of stuff. And they're going, I want that, but I don't know how to get it. What do you tell them?
and it's a great question, and I have a twofold answer.
Good.
There are some universal truths to me around that. And I always encourage people when you hear the word truth to recognize that when you hear a postulation of truth, it's ours. It's our responsibility to then say, how is that true for me? Or is that true? To stand and not just kind of like just eat whatever is given to you to eat.
Mm.
The brilliance, so we have a dynamic relationship with the divine. It's dynamic, which means it's alive at each moment for us to discover. And it's when we are willing to be solitary in that journey that we discover and we grasp beyond words these truths. So I would say there's a couple of things for me that I find I hold as universally true. And then there is the process that I think is entirely unique per individual. And that's the beauty of it. It's not going to be cookie cutter. It's like when you read those books. I think it's so funny when you're like 5 steps to living undaunted for the rest of your life, and kind of to reduce it down. And there's some value in shining a light that there are some principles. But when it comes down to the journey, the beauty is that we are loved into existence and we get to walk this path and discover our way. What I find to be universally worthy to consider is that if there is eternal source, a benevolent, loving, eternal source, capital S, in which all creation has come into, then on the most essential, fundamental level, that informing is happening. That it's written upon our being. It's like in Deuteronomy. You do not have to learn how to make a boat and travel across the sea to find it. You don't have to grow wings and fly up to the sun. No, my law, which is / my love when I studied Hebrew text, is not that mysterious and remote. It is already written upon your heart and your lips. It's just yours to carry it out. So a big piece in living that untouchable peace is being willing to heal or shift perspectives that do not serve you, that do not serve this understanding. And we have all sorts of limiting ideas and beliefs about what it means to be in the world, who we are in the world, what our roles are, what our identity is, what our and eventually they all end up needing to be destroyed in the face of the living source in which we live. And there are ways then that we discover what this play of creation is about when we are stripped of the many limiting ways we define peace. I'll have peace if this happens, or I'll have peace if I get that, or if I do that, which are oftentimes external acts that aren't necessarily coming forward from an inspiration that's at the center of your soul. So the first way to, and the big way, I think, to live a life that is more consistently peace-filled, joy-filled, insight, happiness, is to be willing to let go those limiting perspectives and to challenge them, to work within a relationship like a spiritual mentor or director, or to be in a living community that offers you the possibility to challenge your limiting beliefs, or to choose programs or practices. I'm a big meditation teacher. I think meditation is one of the single most effective tools that can dissolve the unconscious limitations that hold us back from this union at our very center. So being willing to hold nothing back, to let go of the yes, but, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And except for, I don't know about that one, And most of the time when we step back because we're offering a but or a hesitation, it's because we have an erroneous idea of what we're going to lose, or we're moved by certain fears or anxieties that probably don't hold a lot of weight, that probably aren't even true. They're probably just our idea of what's going to happen if we were to let go of something that doesn't serve us. But there are many support systems in that process. And it is your great calling to hear the whisper of God as it's taking place in the center of your being at all times, and to live from that place. And I've been serving people now for 25 years in this process, and I have seen people shift dramatically. Not just physical dramatic healings, that has happened, like, cancer and other sorts of things, shifting from panic attacks, limiting ideas that cause depression, anxiety, limiting relationships because of the ideas that we put upon who we're meant to be in the world or how things are meant to go. But I think it's possible for every human being to live that noble desire to be a person of peace.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I was looking down. I'm taking notes and I'm running out of room on my paper. as you're sharing that, some things that immediately came to mind. One is I thought of Peter and in his denied Christ 3 times, and even Christ told him, you're going to do it, but Peter thinks, I'm too tough for that, and I'm centered, I'm focused, I'm here for the long haul, the fight, and all that kind of stuff. And then he reverted, which we all do. I mean, I think we've been raised this way, conditioned this way, is the flight, fright, or freeze. That's our response when we encounter obstacles or the unexpected, even sometimes in good circumstances. Hey, we're offering you this promotion, and you got to move 2,000 miles away, but you're going to make more money and this, that, and the other thing, and you go into that emotional reaction, fight, flight, or freeze, because I don't know what to do. And you start thinking of all the negative. Well, that means, and then you don't take. I don't know what the word I want to use. So I'm going to go back to Peter and even Paul, and then ultimately how Christ lived everything you just said. But how Peter, he ran away when the crisis came. And wept bitterly and all that. But at that transformation you're talking about, that realization of God being at the center of his life, and then he came back, and we know the rest of his story through Scripture. Paul, same way. He thinks he's doing, as Saul, he thinks he's doing God's work and doing the Jewish faith a favor, until Christ literally gets his attention. It never says that in the Bible he was actually knocked off a horse, but that's what everybody says. And then his transformation. But ultimately, everything you're saying, Christ lived out for us to begin with. What did he do when he was needed to be alone? He went off in prayer, whether it's meditation, prayer, quiet time, or whatever you want to call it. He went off in prayer. Look at the passion. He was sweating blood, which I actually researched that. It's physically possible. Your capillaries bust. And he was so intensely consumed with what he knew was going to come, but he still said, not my will be done, but yours. And that's the God-centered divine that you're talking about, that we can live. We don't have to be happy. A lot of people go, oh, well, peace, joy, and freedom means I don't have any problems. Or what's the song? Don't worry, be happy. I agree with don't worry. I disagree with be happy. Be content. Be content. Happy's an emotion, and it goes up, like everything else. Anger, all sorts of things are emotions. Contentment is a state of mind. You can be content in the most miserable circumstances and not have the panic attacks, even though you're going through. When our youngest son died, serving overseas, when my wife was diagnosed with ovarian cancer and other things that have happened, I definitely was not happy.
Yeah.
But I did find what's Christ called it, peace beyond all understanding. I did find peace and contentment in my circumstances, because the Psalm says, be still and know that I am God. Or Job concluded, with everything he lost and went through, Job concluded, God is God and I am not. And I think that's what you're sharing, and some of the things you've talked about of how you get there. What are some other things? Because some people, they're visual learners. Some people are audible learners. Some people are antsy and can't sit still, which is me. What are some other things people can do to start that path, that journey of attaining that mindset?
Right, right. So there's these three words came to me. I used this when I was working with government employees for a bit because they were in a time, it was, I can't remember what year it was, but it was when there were a lot of layoffs. It was like after the 2007 fall of things, and I was living in Florida, and people were losing their homes, and there was a lot of fear. And that there was a government department that hired me to work with the employees to help them navigate that. And we did I don't know, it was a 6-month series. And I remember doing that and framing everything on these three words. And I think they ring as pretty comprehensive to start down that path or to continue down that path. And the three words are reinforce, redirect, redefine. So reinforce would be the choices to spend your time, whether it's mental energy, whether it's physical time, whatever that means to you, and saying yes to the things that are that truly inspire you. As adults, we tend to allow the stressors of life to immediately squash the
Yeah.
moment of
Yeah.
quiet contentment, right? Because contentment's not dramatic. So I like your word contentment. It's not dramatic. It's not like the woohoo, I was lost in the sea for 5 hours and now I'm floating,
Yeah.
which is less common. But we experience so many moments that are quiet inspiration. And the word reinforce is make more choices for that. You can't force how you're going to feel, but you can say yes to the things that truly inspire you. If you're somebody that loves Lectio Divina, so that's
Mm.
inspired, make the choice to do it just 10 minutes a day. Now, it's not going to feel great every single day, but what will happen, and this is proven, in my seminary, we studied this neurologically and psychologically. What happens is when we make a choice to reinforce a small habit that is inspiring, our psychology and our nervous system repattern themselves to expect more inspiration.
Hmm.
And so there's a kind of a snowball effect that begins to happen. And then what happens, the 10 minutes that you spend, you end up dropping in for another 10 minutes because you have the time, and it happens more effortlessly. So reinforce would be that, making the choices for the relationships that are healthy, making the choices for how you are going to live out your day or your week that allows the kind of balance that oftentimes our Western culture encourages us to negate for ourselves. We're encouraged to be overstimulated and overbooked. I mean, I was noticing the past number of years how often when I would say, hey, how are you? Or what are you up to? And that almost, not always, but almost always the person will respond, oh, I'm so busy.
Hmm.
Now, what is actually happening in your brain in even saying that word? And where is the space for communion with the divine in that?
Hmm.
I'm so busy. There's automatically an uptightness or a contractedness that's happening. So reinforce is making the choices, which you can do incrementally in small ways, that will open it up. Now, I'm a banquet spirituality person, and that that actually surprises a lot of people because monastic life is very rigorous. You fast a lot. We made you had a sawhorse wooden plank bed with your mattress being corn shucks, and you live a very, very simple austere life. And people were like, well, what do you mean a banquet spirituality? That sounds like something severe to me. I'm like, this life is so juicy and filled with the divine. It is bursting. The heavens proclaim the glory of God. The firmament tells the handiwork. Day unto day tells the story. Night unto night reveals the message. That means that every breath, every moment, every second, there is abundance and brilliance taking place. So using the word reinforce can say, wow, well, how can I make myself more available for this? And we find that what happens is we think we're acting and we're the agents, but then we find out that we're not, that it's there all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that we are finally allowing ourselves to be touched, to be held. Even in the stories you told with Peter and Paul, sometimes there can be so many angles in looking at it, and this was not the angle you were looking at it at all. But sometimes people can look at these various failings, like when we're overconfident that we would never betray love, or we're very confident that we're doing God's will, and then we get knocked off our horse.
Yeah.
There can oftentimes be this human tendency to turn that into self-judgment and a reinforcement of unworthiness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as we grow as mystics, we discover that we are actually held in embrace in those moments. I think when Jesus told Peter ahead of time, this is me postulating, so please take it with a grain of salt. I think part of the motive was that Jesus hoped that Peter would remember that he was seen with love before it even happened.
Mm-hmm.
That he was beheld in his moments of weakness and separation from the divine. So reinforce one.
Yeah.
Then there's the other. Go ahead.
It just pops. The squirrel just ran across the yard, and I'm chasing it. The flip side to Peter is Judas. That Judas could not see the love of God, despite he realized what he had done was wrong, and he regretted it, but was so consumed with that regret that he could not see the presence of God in his life, and that forgiveness was there, and then we know what he did. So I just see that's kind of, I don't know, the yin and the yang, the kind of stories that, because we all think, not, I'm being generalistic here, we all think this has never happened to somebody else. It's like, this is only I could, have experienced this, or, why me, God, kind of deal. And it's like, well, there's been, since creation, there has, or the fall, whatever you want to refer to it as, you're not the first and you're not going to be the last that has these shortcomings, these temptations, but be still and know that I am God. And things, what's the song? We all have, I can't remember who sings it. It's basically, we all have Good Fridays, but remember there's an Easter Sunday. And that promise of salvation and redemption and keeping the promises, it's only a few days away. So don't lose hope, kind of deal.
Yeah, these are lovely images, right? And I think even this is an extreme example, right, of despair, genuine despair. But it's also easy if I like to even move into the archetypal realities of each of these individuals that were part of the community around Jesus. And if you look, for me, archetypally at Judas, what are ways, in any way, shape, or form, that we turn to despair?
Mm-hmm.
Little unconscious ways that we go about life with a little thread of despair holding us back, and thinking sometimes we can despair or go down those paths thinking somehow we're then, I don't know, in some strange way taking responsibility. you know,
Hmm.
responding appropriately to some quality within ourselves that we have. But what's fair?
Survivor's guilt. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to mind is you survived the plane crash. You survived whatever, and somebody else did not. And then you turn that into a negative somehow, and you feel guilty about surviving as opposed to what is God trying to use me for his purposes from this tragic event. And I that's just what came to mind as you're talking about that we have this thread of despair that we're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And because of that, we're preventing ourselves from seeing whatever it is that the divine in every day. I'll do it all the time. I'll jump on Facebook. I'll look up and I'll look at a cloud and I go, oh man, I see a dog. I see whatever I see. And then I'll post it on Facebook. Hey, what do you see? I don't tell them what do you see? But that is seeing the divine in action, that the clouds can, you have that ability to imagine and see something beautiful or inspiring or entertaining or whatever you want to call it. And so often we're walking around in life with our head down instead of looking up at the sky. I mean, metaphorically speaking. uh, um, that just I seriously, I have so many notes written down. I'm just like, uh, this is a great conversation, but I want to kind of, I want to redirect it a little bit because you've had your new book has come out. Oh, I was looking right at it. Give me the name. Miracles in the Naked Light.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what is that about? Because I know your story about helping with no engineering degree, no construction degree or anything, that it was placed upon your heart. We need to build this new monastery, and you, over a period of years, made it happen. But tell us about the book.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great book. It's, in a way, it is a continuation of my first book. So I have 3 books. One's all poetry, Beloved Found. So they're poems between me and the divine. The first book, Love Calls, and it is what it says, it's my discovery of divine love at my center. And Miracles in the Naked Light. On the light, so it's not meant to be just memoir based, but on the light memoir line, it continues from where Love Calls left off. But the real meat of the book is opening up my own experience and the exploration of what does it mean that everything is grace, that every moment is grace, and I'm not exploring it as a theologian or a minister. I love doing that as well. I'm taking the events in my life and letting the event itself, the story in each part of that. It's 2.5 years. It covers 2.5 years. And it uses the monastery project and the monastery community as the place wherein I was being changed and healed and uplifted by what was taking place. And it shows my participation in that. So, within it, you've got these layers of, I received this call. And my hope is everyone else will not look at me, but go, how have I received a call like that? Be
Mhm.
self-reflective. And probably like many of us do, when I was in a moment of really unfulfilled longing, and during meditation time, I complained to God about it
Hmm.
in the best way, where you're heard and held. And I was longing for more silence. And as I was fully honest about what I was feeling and thinking, I heard, build the permanent monastery. So it was a response to a personal angst. It wasn't even
Hmm.
angst, but it had much more meaning to it than just that.
Hmm.
Plus, it was so delicious when I heard it, because when we get inspirations, just even the energy of the inspiration itself can just fill us with a sweetness or a joy. I just was like a big yes, but I had no idea I was saying yes to building a monastery. My implicit understanding of hearing that phrase was, this is going to happen. Build the permanent monastery. The community is going to build the monastery. The monastery is going to come about, was my take. If you had to ask me like later on that night what happened, it was only once everything started that I realized and I experienced that I had been downloaded with everything I needed to know to be one of the architects, to be the general contractor, and to be, I wasn't the only fundraiser, but I was the main fundraiser in that whenever I spoke, people donated things. So I would say if you looked at a spreadsheet of where things came from and what the value was, I was the principal fundraiser, but I wasn't trying to raise money.
Yeah.
So it was just by virtue of how it happened. And the book goes into my daily experience of this because there were so many layers to it. I mean, first it's the being confounded almost of, oh my God, how do I know how to run electric, from a chandelier across open trusses into the wall and where we put the panel, and like just my ability to have these dialogues with the engineers, with our architects we worked with our various contractors and subcontractors and suppliers and all these people. It was easy, Pat. It was easy. It was easy. And
Uh,
what's funny about writing this book is because my manuscript was 860 pages, I think. So this book and then the next one finishes the whole project. It's all written. But when I was doing the research and doing the final edit with my publisher, I always thought we did it in 3.5 years. We were donated literally within a month of having given that yes. The next week, the leader in the community put it on the agenda. Should we find our permanent place? Because we were living in a converted house right on top of each other for years, 24/7, no,
yeah.
everything we did was truncated. Uh, so there was a need for a facility. And within a week of that inspiration, it was on the agenda and the community voted yes. Within a month, we were donated 640 acres of land. And our choice, the couple that donated it had multiple plots of land in this area. And we got to go around and visit and choose right where we wanted to be. So things just set in motion effortlessly. And when I was doing some research on a couple things for the book, I was floored to learn that we actually built in 2.5 years, not 3.5.
Wow.
And this was nothing. We had no power. I brought in 3-phase line for 10 miles that was donated to us. So we dynamited for the septic system, the grave fields, and then you look at the monastery that's beautiful with carved stone and a bell tower, and everything was, the workmanship is just the best. It's rare, if ever, something like that could be built in 2.5 years. And you didn't hire everybody. Add the layer on that we didn't go in with a budget and all of these pieces that would let you have a strategy for how the project was going to go. We gave our yes and things came as we needed it. 2.5 years. So this tells the story of the monastery project leading up to the inspiration, and then about 1.5 years into the building itself. And then this other book that will come out in a couple of years that's written.
So, give us the name of the monastery and where it's at. I've seen pictures of it. I know the answer, but share with us the name of the monastery and where it's at.
In
I'm,
Carmel of Mary in Cristoval, Texas. And if you're listening to the podcast, if you go to my website, my TED Talk there has, I don't know, about 8 pictures of the monastery. And it shows the open land. It shows us mid-project. Obviously it wasn't a conference, so I couldn't give you more pictures. It was a TED talk where you get 11 minutes. But
Yeah.
you get a real sense of the before and the after in that talk. And it's just, but what it does as well is shines a light that when we really give our yes, so we're talking about living, no holds, throwing ourselves into life, knowing we have a call, being willing to discover it, being willing to go through the process of undoing and emptiness to discover who and what we are. In that, because I was so all in, you get the story of what happens, the various kinds of inner states that arise
Hmm.
that deep and with that single-hearted and single eye, right?
Yeah.
And then you also get that when a really big miracle happens in the world, not everybody's open to it. And we always think that if good shows up in all its fullness, everyone's going to gravitate to it. Like, why?
Hmm.
It's all love, it's all goodness, it's all like, this is all good. And you get that in the example of Jesus, right? You've got somebody who's just all love, and you kind of look at it and go like, why did those things happen? And well, the same thing happened with the monastery because it was such a powerful force and how it was coming together, and the light that it was, because it definitely was not just of a human design. You couldn't orchestrate that, and I couldn't have gotten out of the flow of doing that if I had wanted to. I was like on a rushing river. I mean, it just, you went with that flow, and but jealousy arose,
Hmm.
suspicion arose, opposition arose. It hit, and that's where you get in the Gospels. I actually experienced, because there was a certain point when um, darkness surfaced pretty strongly in the project. Not in my doing the project and all the people I was working with, but some individuals coagulating for some less than noble reasons of suspicion and all sorts of other triggers that were hit with them. And I on Epiphany, we would always draw a scripture quote, and it would always be very inspired. Monastic life is very intense and very inspired. And I got this quote: "And a sword your own heart shall pierce. Secret thoughts of many will be laid bare." And that, if you don't know that gospel passage, that is a prophecy that is said to Mary when Jesus is taken to the temple as a baby.
Hmm.
And I think that happens whenever we give our yes in life and we're all in. We don't want to be naive. We as a human species, we are still evolving. We are still largely dominated by fear, and fear begets darkness. Fear begets division. Fear begets everything you can think of that causes unfair destruction. And so we can't be naive that when something really wonderful happens, that light will shine whatever's going on within people's hearts. And if and I worked with people that in the face of the shit hitting the fan at different point, and I don't cuss, but that's it. That's just kind of what happened. That they were so authentic, they were untouchable. And then there were others that had things to be healed within, and that came out through reaction and through aspects of fear-based choices and words. And then you had unconscious aspects that came forward when groups targeted us. And I ended up being a target because, you look at my TED talk and I was very real. I was so darn young. I mean, I was like 29, 30 years old. And it would make sense that if you had older people in the area that had been
Hmm.
trying to raise money for really great projects, not going smoothly, look at this like, What's she doing? It's got to be illegal. That's what some people were saying. What's she doing? Not it must be of God, but what's she doing? It must be illegal. You see the illogical part there. So in the book, you get hopefully a gracious look at all this is all full of layers until we truly evolve where love dissolves all fear. There's going to be layers in this life. But if you give your all and you are all in, you will be carried.
Yep. Absolutely. Man, as you're saying it, I'm going, oh man, what were people saying about Noah or Moses? All the excuses, 40 years wandering around after he killed the Egyptian and whatnot. And he's, kind of went off the grid and then gets this calling from God. And no, I don't speak real well. I don't this, I don't that. And God had an answer for everything. Or Saul thinking he's doing they're breaking the law. They're breaking the Jewish law. The Sadducees, the Pharisees, the scribes. The person of Christ has been prophesied to you, and you've been preaching it, and now it's here, and you don't see it, and you've tried to, like you say, attack. There's something wrong with this guy. This can't be true. That's kind of our human experience that we fall to, as opposed to our divine part of our existence that we don't rise to. So that's, man, how do people get a hold of you?
Right. So my website, kimberlybraun.com, you can join my newsletter. You can email me. You can buy my books. You can join my YouTube channel. I have hundreds of videos and I'm always doing more. I also have an online spiritual community through Patreon. You go to my website, kimberlybraun.com, and you can link through from there. And I do inspirational videos. I do 3 mystic meditation immersions per year. There's a free level, and then the paid level is only $11 a month. So I keep that offering at a very low level. And surprisingly, I was just talking with a colleague today, a progressive Christian Methodist minister of mine, great friend. We are going to start, we haven't coined it yet, but we think we're going to call it the Engaged Mystic. We are going to start by offering a really powerful retreat on what it means to be in this world as an engaged mystic. And we're going to draw upon some really powerful individuals in the past that lived that out fully. And then we'll be
Wow.
Well,
is that going to be here in Colorado?
Yes, we're looking at retreat places, even right down at Colorado Springs. We're looking at the Franciscan Center down there, and we're trying to decide the location. So,
St. Francis of Assisi in Colorado Springs.
I think Franciscan Retreat Center on Deer Hill Grove or something like that, or Deer.
That I bet it's the retreat center that's on the grounds at St. Francis of Assisi. That we used to go to church there when we lived in the Springs.
Hey.
And it has a fascinating story. Well, I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm going to have you back on. I want to get some deeper into the book and your experiences. Last kind of final words. I didn't ask you something that you're going, come on, Pat, ask me this, that you want to share with people. Is there a kind of a last message?
I want to end with one of my poems.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay. Let me see where I can pull it up because I've got it on my iPad. But my book is in the room. I always carry my book in my bag, but I took it out for a reason. So give me just a minute to pull it up. Yes. Yeah. There's always so much for us to share, isn't there?
Yes.
So much to share. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to read this poem that is a much later poem. It was written, I wrote this probably within the last 10 years, probably about 10 years ago. But it speaks to that experience when I was 5 with the leaf. So since we started with the leaf, I thought
All right.
I'd
Okay.
great. Okay, hold on to your chairs, everybody. This is There was this kiss I had when I was 5. It sucked my lips off and took them into etheric realms where they spoke the word of God. The words blew up leaves and inebriated the caterpillar. All creation heard the exultant phrases, heard the sound that blew like a lover's whisper into the fiber of every particle. There was a wedding dance then, and I cried, for the branches on my street lit themselves up as the candles of our union.
Wow. Okay, we're definitely got to get you back, have the long version of the leaf, and talk about, because there's so much that I can relate to. You know, the miracle, like my wife's miraculous outcome from her ovarian cancer, and the doctor, after they did the surgery, told my wife's doctor, "I never admit that this was a miracle. I don't know what happened, but what we discovered is physically and medically impossible." And she did not have to have chemo or radiation. It's a crazy. I wouldn't believe the story if I hadn't lived it. So we're going to get you back. So, man, thank you so much for being here. It's energizing to talk to you, and I'd look forward to hearing about your retreats and whatnot, because we're both here in Colorado. So and I'm gonna get your book. I've done the research, but I'm like, okay, now the book. Now I definitely have to hear the whole story.
You have to know what you think.
Yeah, I will. This has been fun, and for our listeners, man, if this resonated with you, reach out to Kimberly. Again, it's Kimberly Braun, BRAUN. .com. Reach out to her and learn more and expand your knowledge base and grow, because that's what makes us better human beings. And to our listeners, as I always say, man, we are so grateful for you to be loyal listeners, that we're now in 74 countries plus Hong Kong, China. And it's all because of you and sharing the warrior servant leader message with people that will resonate with that message. So thank you so much as we keep growing together. And as I end every episode, it's always the same message. So here it is again. Always, always, always strive to do the right thing at the right time, the right way, and for the right reasons, because that's what warrior servants and leaders do every day, every time. Love you all, and see you next week.